Patty, when people start RVing, everybody starts at zero, meaning we're all newbies. And this week I was reminded that sometimes we forget not everyone knows exactly what they're doing and might need our help. And I thought we'd talk about that in this episode of Travels with Delaney,
the podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back. My name's Patrick.
I'm Patty.
And we are joined by Mr. Truman Marshall here on the old podcast sofa. His sister Bess is asleep over in the theater seats.
That's
and
her
for
spot.
those of you not watching us on YouTube, the Travels with Delaney, the podcast YouTube channel, you can't see, but those are our Cavalier King Charles Spaniels.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
sometimes I forget that not everybody sees us; they only hear us on this
Right,
podcast.
right.
So.
Yeah.
Well, Patty, it is wet here at Old Happy Acres Campground.
We're gonna need a boat.
Yes. It rained last night. Over
Hard.
2 inches is what I'm being told.
Yes.
The road into the campground was actually flooded. You could still get in and out, but it was a good inch deep. It is receding now, so
That's good.
but it is still lightly raining out. What time did it start yesterday? I don't even remember.
Golly, in the evening time.
Yeah.
Like 6, 7 o'clock at night or something like
and
that.
it's now after it's 10:30 on Thursday. We're
Mhm.
recording on Thursday this week.
Well, we didn't have thunder and lightning then finally about, of course, when you want to go to bed.
Right.
Late it started thundering and cracking and booming out there. But yeah, heavy rain.
So
Heavy rain.
heavy rains, very heavy rains, and so yeah, I did get the pool open this morning. I'm just not sure there's going to be very many people swimming today with this rain.
Yeah, you could probably just swim out here in the road.
Just swim in the road.
Just go a little swimming out
Yeah.
the road
So
here.
hopefully, though, the weather is going to be drying up here later this afternoon. I don't know we're going to get much mowing done today,
Yeah,
but we'll get
probably
it
tomorrow.
tomorrow morning. And then we've got a big weekend coming up here at the campground.
The only good thing about this rain, one, everything was completely dry. We needed, but this is like overkill on the rain. But it's going to cool it off a little bit because we had humidity already. It was like in the upper 80s.
Yeah.
Now it's going to just be more like what I like
Right.
mid 70s,
Yeah.
sunny,
And
less
it'll
humidity.
continue to help, things grow around here as we're,
Well, and the weather people said it's actually going to help move that smoke from Canada
right.
out because it has ruined our blue skies lately. It's pretty
Yeah.
gray.
So
Yeah.
So hopefully the sun will come out soon, and we'll be back to happy campers here in the old campground.
We're always happy campers
Well,
at
that's
Happy
true.
Acres. It doesn't matter what the weather is.
I see Mike rolling out. He's got his fishing boat.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, and you probably don't.
That's
but,
Amy's husband.
Amy, who is our full-time work camper up in the store, her husband, he comes and goes every other week because he has a 7-on, 7-off job. But he's heading home to go back to work for a week, and he had his fishing boat in tow. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to talk today about what it was like when we first bought an RV and things that today we take for granted that we just didn't know as a newbie. But before we do that, we have to do another exciting round of this or that.
Okay. All right.
So, Patty, recently I bought a brand new Traeger smoker
You did.
pellet grill.
You should go. Oh,
I tell you what, it's a nice one. I'll pick that up at Costco, and I don't know what the actual space is on it, but it's big.
She's a fat bottom girl.
Yes, it is. Tell you what. And so far, I've been very pleased with it.
Oh, yeah.
So, of the following items that I have smoked so far,
Okay.
which has been your favorite?
Okay.
Was it the beef brisket that I did,
Okay.
or was it the poor man's burnt ends made out of the chuck roast?
Oh, my gosh. That's not fair. They both were amazing. He was so nervous about the ribs because we
Well,
were
I didn't
feeding
say
others.
Not ribs.
I mean,
brisket. Yep.
because we were feeding others around here.
Yeah.
You know what? I think I'm going to go, if I had to do
You can
one
only
over
have
the other.
one.
Yeah, the poor man's
Burn ends.
burn ends.
You like
There's
those?
something about the poor man burn ends when you've done those before.
Yeah.
I don't know. I went for the burn end anyway.
You did actually. When I sliced the brisket, there's multiple parts to a brisket. There's the lean, and then there's the more fatty, and then at the one end you cut it off and make little burnt ends. And that was the first thing you grabbed out of that pan.
I did.
So, the poor man's burnt ends, which really, I mean, I don't know if they're really for a poor man because chuck roast is
Pretty
not cheap,
expensive, yeah.
but it's actually a very simple recipe. You just take a chuck roast, season it up real good, and smoke it. Yesterday I think I smoked that at 250 for
Over
about 6 hours.
or more,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then chunk it up, re-season it so all the sides are
Uh-huh.
seasoned, and then throw some barbecue sauce on in a pan. Put them back in. I think I put them back in for about 30
Let
minutes.
them get happy.
And I'll tell you what, they are very much like burnt
They
ends.
are. It is amazing how that works, and they're
Yeah.
so
And the
good.
real advantage is the whole chuck roast becomes burnt ends. You have a limited
Uh-huh.
number of burnt ends on a brisket.
Yep.
Plus, I mean, the brisket I smoked was a fairly small one, and it was still $50. So
Mm.
it's not uncommon to see brisket running 70, 80, $90 for a whole brisket. And if you just want the burnt ends like you,
Yeah.
then the chuck roast is definitely the way to
Oh,
go.
oh, oh. That's
So
my fave.
we also did a chicken so far
Yeah,
on the
that was
Traeger, and that
good.
was nice and juicy.
The
So
skin was really
we are
good.
going to do some ribs on there soon
Right.
and see how they come out.
Yep,
But,
yep.
all right, well, enough of the barbecue talk.
The barbecue
The
talk. The
barbecue talk. Yeah,
BBQ.
that's right. Let's talk about being an RV newbie.
All right.
So what sparked this was this week we had a very nice couple, I believe they're from Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
show up with their brand new fifth wheel in
Yeah,
tow.
they bought it from Bish's in Coldwater.
Yep, and I had met them earlier because they had stopped down a couple times. One to look at the campground, and then they came. I think it was this past weekend to pick out a site because they knew they had decided to buy this RV. They were going to pick it up, and they wanted to do their maiden voyage right here because we're only what 30 minutes from
Yeah,
Bish's up in
basically.
Coldwater. So if
Yeah.
anybody wants to come visit Josh the RV nerd from YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
he's only about 30 miles from us, so you
Yep.
can camp here and head up to Bish's. Not that this is a sponsored video by Bish's. We
No.
wish it was, but it's not.
No.
Um, and so they showed up on, I think that was Monday. Was it Monday?
It
Yeah, it
was
would have had to be
Monday.
Monday.
Yes, it was Monday.
And so we got them all checked in, and they headed back. And I didn't think anything of it. I knew they were brand new to RVing,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd never done it before, but didn't really think about it. And it was probably, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes later. Nah, probably 30 minutes later,
Yeah,
if
not too
that, if
long.
that. The gentleman walked back in, and he says, I've never done this before. I'm in the site, but I don't know where I'm going to park my truck. Now, I put him on a big pull through,
Right.
and their fifth wheel is not that big.
No.
And so I said, well, you should have plenty of room. You either need to, back your trailer up so that you can park at the front of the trailer or pull it forward. But I said the main thing is you need to make sure that you're near your hookups.
Right.
And he said, well, I'm afraid if I do that, I'm going to need an electrical extension cord, and I don't have one. And I said, well, I have, because we do keep some extension cords for, I think 30. I don't know if we have a 50 down
Or
there or not.
if you need to
And
reach. Yeah.
yeah, but I said you shouldn't have to. Like nobody uses an extension
Mm.
cord on that site. And and he goes, well, I just don't know how I'm going to be able to do it. So I said, you know what? My wife is out in the park. You were cleaning
I
cabins.
was.
And I radioed you and said, Patty, could you go over and take a look at the situation, and I'll let you take
And
over.
I did. I walked over and first thing I met their cute little 15-week-old puppy, and I forget the name of this puppy, but
I did
adorable.
get to see it
Did you get to see the
yesterday. Yeah,
puppy?
he is
He is a
cute.
cutie.
West Highland Terrier.
Yes,
Yeah.
and he's all black, and he's just full of vinegar, and like little puppies are. But anyway, and so you called me. I walked over, and the husband was walking back, and I was talking to the wife, and I forget their names.
Right.
But unfortunately, but I'm like, I think what we should do. And I was talking to the wife that he should back it up or pull it forward. I mean, pull his rig forward. And she goes, well, the truck will be sticking out in the road. And I said, but if you do that, you unhitch, and then you put your truck behind. And I had to explain that a couple more times, and then she's like, well, let's see what he thinks. So the gentleman showed up, and I explained it again, how I think they should pull it forward some, and then we can unhitch and put the truck behind. And he goes, you think there'll be enough space back there? I said, absolutely. And he kind of was still hesitant.
Right.
Okay, and then finally, I convinced him to try it. And he has it paced off in his head. He knew how many paces long his truck was,
Right.
and how many paces long his RV was, and how long his cable was. He had everything.
Right.
He was prepared in that aspect. So anyway, getting to pull it forward. And then he goes, "You think my truck will fit there?" And I said, "Absolutely." And he goes, "Well, let me pace it off." And I'm like, "Okay, go pace it off."
Wasn't our first rodeo, was it?
He paced it off and he goes, "You're right." And I said, "I think you'll have room now
Yeah.
to unhitch and then hook up your sewer and hook up your electric, and your slide outs won't hit the power, all that, the
Right.
power stand." And I said, "You'll be good." Yeah.
And he told me that he honestly, when you told him it would fit, he really didn't believe you.
You didn't think
Well, he just said, he goes, I guess my perception of length is off but he fit no problem.
Yeah, he had a lots of room back there.
But that was what got me. I think when you came back up and you said, I've got him in, he fits, and I said, this is going to be our next podcast topic, because all of us, and this is what I told them because I came
We're
back
all
out.
in that situation.
I said, don't be embarrassed.
He felt
Don't
bad.
be, because we all start at zero. We all are newbies at some point in our RV career. And the truth is, even when you're a veteran, I told him this. I said, I've been doing this for 20 years. I still make mistakes.
Well, and he was so cute because he said, "I researched and I've watched so many videos. My wife and I, we've watched shows. Yeah, we've watched so many. We thought we were prepared. It looks so easy on the video." And I said, and he goes, "I'm so dumb." And I go, "No, you're not."
No.
I said, "We're all in that
That's what
situation."
I told him. I said, don't ever feel that way.
I go, "You're fine."
It was interesting, though, and I'm going to share this story. I don't think he would mind, and that's why I'm not using. I do know their names. I'm not
Okay.
using it just because I didn't ask their permission.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was when he checked in or if it was later after he checked in. He's in the store and he goes, "You look familiar."
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Well, you've been here a couple times," because he had come to look at the park, and then last weekend they came. And I said, "I remember I was the one that was helping." He goes, "I know." He goes, "But it's just something about your voice." And then he said, "Have you ever been in a video?" And I kind of chuckled, and I said, "For the campground?"
Yeah.
I go, "For the campground?" He goes, "Maybe." He goes, And I said, "Well," I said, "it's possible you saw me on the campground social media." He goes, "Maybe that's what it is." And I go, "But I also have been operating a channel now for 8 years called Travels with Delaney." He goes, "That's it." He goes, "I've watched a bunch of your videos." So, which was that was nice.
Cute.
But yeah, I mean, it just got me thinking. And then at some point, I think you saw that
Well, I
they
kept
were
kind of looking over, making sure he's okay.
just making sure, yeah.
And they were taking a really long time to unhitch. And I could tell from my angle, it was like they were both looking at the hitch, standing back, rubbing their head, looking at the hitch, standing back, pacing back and forth. I'm like, they're obviously not
Something's
sure.
not right.
Yeah.
So you came up.
Uh-huh.
I left you in charge of the store, which was scary.
It was scary.
Since you've never been trained.
But
in the
nothing
store.
happened.
Right,
there.
nothing happened. But I figured if somebody came in, you could at least say,
well,
"Hey."
Amy came to the rescue.
Oh, that's right.
Dun,
Amy
dun,
came
dun,
up.
dun,
So
dun,
I
dun,
fly
dun.
out. I fly out on the golf cart, and when I get there, they're already unhitched. And so I just said, I go, "Are you guys doing okay?" I said, "Patty saw you, thought maybe you needed some help unhitching," and he said, "No, we were just taking extra caution before we unhitch, because we didn't want something to happen, like bad to happen."
Right.
I go, like a fifth wheel falling on your truck bed." And he goes, "Exactly." And I said, "Well, it looks like you did a great job." And I said, "If I can give you," I said, "my only piece of advice, which I'm sure your dealer told you, is when you put down your front landing gear, I always, when I push that in, or if it goes in on its own, I push extra hard, and then I feel on the other side to make sure the pin went through all the way, because you don't want one of those pins not going through and then it breaking." And he said, "Well, actually, the dealer did tell me that, and I did it." And he goes, "The dealer told me a lot of stuff, but I seem not to remember a lot of it."
You don't.
And again, that was kind of that inspiration for today.
You don't. Too much overload.
That's what I told him. I said, "Look, you've never owned an RV in your life. You showed up," and I know they did their research, because he said they had watched lots of it. In fact, he said that's why it was taking them so long to unhitch, because they were being overcautious and they were rewatching a video on how to unhitch from a fifth wheel, which I think is smart. If you're not sure and you have a signal to where you can go on YouTube quickly. Right. There's plenty of it. I'm not endorsing my videos. I'm just saying any video that can help. We do that sometimes. Where
on anything.
Yeah. So, but if you think about it, so you go to the dealership to pick up your RV. We've done this.
Uh-huh.
And by the way, you don't have to be a newbie for this to happen.
Yeah.
You do a walkthrough, and they're showing you a lot of stuff.
Too much.
I mean, they're telling you this is where you turn on your water heater and this is where you turn on your refrigerator and then do this when you bring the slides in or do this when and you I mean it's a good if they do a good orientation, it's a good hour.
It's long.
And so it's a lot of information. That's why some people will actually
Record it.
record their orientation.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, and I don't know if they're still doing this, PJ at Princess Craft during COVID, because they couldn't actually do orientations.
They were doing recordings.
They were recording like mock orientations for every RV. And so when we picked up our Lance in 2020, we didn't get an actual orientation, but we received a thumb drive.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you call them? Jump drive, thumb drive?
Something.
That we could just insert into our computer.
Flash
drive, yeah. Into our computer, and we watched Cody do a complete walkthrough of our Lance, showing us everything. And I actually thought that was better than in person because I could go back and rewatch things.
Right. You could stop, slow down, stop, go back, you know, how many times you wanted.
Right. So if your dealer doesn't do that, and I don't think most do that, then I would recommend, you know, maybe one of you, like I'm doing really focusing on what they're saying, and you're just walking around with us with the camera going so that we could go back later and, you know, rewatch it if we had questions. So ultimately, then they did end up getting all set up.
Yep.
In fact, I think
they're
getting
just
ready.
They're
getting rehitched. Hopefully, everything's going well.
It looks good, yeah.
And but there's just a lot for new RVers to take in.
Oh yeah.
And
in a short amount of time, when you're trying to learn something new, it's hard.
And so I think I have advice that I wanted to share today for both the new RVer who's never done it before, and also for all of us as veterans. And so and please chime in if you have any thoughts on any of this.
Chime.
Yeah, you can do that. You can make your own sound effects. You know, but number one, if you are new, never be afraid to ask for help.
Right.
Don't think, oh, this is embarrassing, I don't know how to do it. Trust me, we were all there at one time, and I always tell students this, there is no stupid question.
Well, yeah, that's what you tell them. I told them for 26 years, there's no stupid question.
Right.
Yeah.
So do that. Number two, take your time. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. And
because we have even your Uncle Dennis, when he camps, he's like, I don't want to rush through this.
Right.
I'm taking my time.
Goes through his mental checklist.
Yeah, because he's like, I don't want to make a mistake by rushing.
Right.
Take your time, get it done right. You know, and then once you get like us over time, you're not rushing, but you have a pattern. And you keep going in that same pattern. It's like anything, like when you teach kids, there's a pattern. You know, you learn the pattern easy. And so then it helps you remember what you got to do.
And you might ahead of time want to develop a checklist.
We used to have that too.
Yep, both for setup and tear down.
Right.
Even though it seems like, well, I just do whatever I did to set up,
but
I
you
just
might
reverse
forget.
And and
do it out of order might not be.
You know, years ago, we used to be all the RVs had those crank up antennas, and that would be something a lot of RVers would forget is to
put those down.
And you know, so that would be something you would put on your checklist, which was, you know, to put your antenna down before you leave.
Right, and don't forget your wife, remember?
Don't forget your wife, that's right. So, you know, maybe a checklist for that first year or more, and you might end up using that checklist for forever if it helps you remember things. And, you know, and just don't be afraid to, like I said, not only ask questions, but ask for help. Whether it's the staff at the RV park that might be able to assist or fellow campers nearby.
Well, and usually in campgrounds, we found everybody is so helpful, you know, camper-wise and work-wise.
Right.
Everyone's willing to help you out.
Yep. And that's the great thing about campgrounds. I've always said, you know, in a campground, when you arrive, everybody is saying hi, and you feel like you have a bunch of friends within a few minutes of arriving. You go to a hotel, if you say hi to somebody in the hallway, they run like, you know, and I think that's the difference between hotels and campgrounds. Here, everybody's just helpful and, you know.
Well, we've all been through it, so
I
think it's like, you know, people should be helpful, and which they are. They usually are.
Which then comes to advice for us as the veterans.
All right.
Because I do think that we also need to be aware that when there's somebody that's new, number one, let's not gawk at the people.
That always drives us crazy as
Right.
newbies
Because
anyway.
if you feel like people, especially when you're new, if you feel like people are staring at you,
You're gonna
it
make
makes it
mistakes.
worse.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you're like, because then you start hurrying because
You
you
want
don't
to
want
just
them
get
to
it
know.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And number two, know when is the right time to offer help.
Right.
All right. So, the minute somebody arrives at the campground doesn't mean you need to run over
Nope.
there and immediately go, you need help setting up,
Nope.
I mean, if you observe, like in this case, if I would have been their neighbor, if there had been a neighbor, there wasn't
Right.
on that site, but had I been their neighbor and I saw him pull in, and I saw him,
Kind of the
having
way he was
issues,
looking.
I
Yeah.
might have just walked over and said, "Hi, I'm, just
It's
seeing
kind
if
of like
you."
what we say at school to the kids: read the room.
Right? Yes.
We teach them to read the room, meaning like be observant, understand like what's going on before you say anything or do
Right.
anything. Yeah.
And and if the person says, "No, no, I'm good. I've been doing this for years," then leave.
Then leave them alone.
Okay, because we were in a situation. Well, I guess that was back in 2020. We were out west, Billings, Montana.
Our friends.
Our friends Mark and Karen
Yep.
were hauling Carl, our old Tab 400, for the
Well, it was
first
their
time.
first
It
trip.
was their
Yeah.
first trip, and up until we arrived in Billings, we had pull-through sites.
Mm-hmm.
But in Billings, unfortunately, when I booked it, all I could get was back-in sites. And so I backed the Lance in,
Mm-hmm.
and you were over with Mark trying to help him.
Right.
Or just you were over there, whatever.
Yeah.
And some gentleman came up and started offering his assistance. And Mark told him, "I'm fine. I just have to go slow." And this guy couldn't read the room.
No, and I think I kind of was just laying back because we had the Lance set up, and I didn't want him
You
to
were just
think
observing.
well, and I
Right.
didn't want him to feel like I was watching him.
Right.
Yeah. Whoops.
And
Yeah, letting him do his
Truman
thing.
sees something.
Just a gentleman over here working on his awning.
Yeah. And then this gentleman just continued to tell Mark everything he was doing wrong and how he was a professional truck driver.
Well, not in a
And-
very kind
And
way.
he wasn't very kind,
No.
you said. I wasn't there initially.
He was very
And-
aggressive.
Right. And he
Mhm.
just couldn't read the room to say, this guy's new. He doesn't want my help. I should leave. Because when somebody doesn't want your help, you should leave.
Because Mark was like trying to be kind and
Right.
polite, which he is, and saying, "I'm
And
okay.
so
let
you
me
came
be."
and got me and said, "Hey, look, Mark's struggling, and this guy's making it much, much
Uh-huh.
worse." And so I walked over and I said, "Hey, Mark, you need some help? Would you like me to get that backed in for you?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Yes, please."
And he got right
and,
out.
and he got out. And then the guy proceeded to tell me that I didn't know what I was doing. And I said, "Sir, if you would just stand clear, I'm going to put this in there." "Well, there's a tree back there." I said, I'm very aware of that tree. And I was able to back it
boy.
right in. So now we have a full-on barking party in our RV.
You want me to can I shut the
You might want to go ahead and shut the
I'm going to shut
the
some blinds real
So,
quick.
But anyway, and I did. I backed their Tab 400 right in. But this gentleman, the point of the story was this gentleman, just as Patty would say, couldn't read the room. That Mark didn't want his help, and so just be aware of that. That even though you may offer your help to someone, whether they're a seasoned veteran who's just having struggles, and by the way, I have struggles at times as a seasoned veteran. For whatever reason, there's just some sites that are harder, let's say, to back into.
Oh, yeah.
And but that doesn't necessarily mean I need people to come help me. I just need to take my time and figure out what I want to do. And so, yeah, so I guess that was my point of this
Right.
is offer help, because like this gentleman, most likely if you were camping beside him and you walked up and said, "Hey, do you need any help?" He most likely would have said, "Yeah, this is our first time and I don't know how I'm going to do this." And then you could help. But if the person says, "No, I'm just taking my time, and I'll figure it out," then that means leave.
Yeah.
So
He's telling you. I mean, it's
Right.
even like, you're reading like body language. and
Right.
it's all about social skills.
And that's kind of when I got out here, he was already unhitched, and we talked for a few minutes, and I said, "You know what? I'm going to let you go ahead,
Mm-hmm.
just set it up, and if you need anything, all you got to do is come up to the camp
Right.
store, and I'll come help you." And he said, "I appreciate that." And I said, "Is there anything before I go you need?" And he goes, "No, I think we're good." And that was my cue to go ahead
Yep.
and leave.
Yep.
Not sit there and watch him go, "Ooh, ooh," making sounds like, "Ooh, I didn't do that." You know that person, right? The one that's always
I
making
know.
the sounds.
Ooh. Yeah.
rolling the eyes, and then you start second guessing.
That must
Like,
be when I saw you peel out and head back to the office.
yep, I was like, hey, that's my cue, and you know what? They're super nice people. I
They
hope they come
are.
back to Happy Acre
Yeah.
sometime. And I think they had a good time. In fact, I even checked on them.
Yeah.
I think it was the next day or two. I was riding by. That's when I got to meet their
Right.
puppy, and I just said, "How's it going? Are you loving the new camper?" And they said absolutely, and everything was going great for them. And I'm glad I saw them roll out of here, which means they got hitched up safely.
Everything looked good as
They're
they
on
were
their
rolling.
way,
Yeah.
and you know what? Now their first time's over. They have survived. They are no longer
They learned a
first
lot.
timers,
Yeah.
and yeah. And you know, all of us will have questions along the way.
Oh
You know,
yeah. Even because even us, when we've done this a lot, but when you change rigs,
right?
there's a whole new set of things to learn.
And technology changes.
Right.
I mean, think about it. We had never had a tankless water heater in our 20 years
Right.
of RVing until this rig.
Right.
That was a new learning curve for me, and I'm still learning
Yeah.
and understanding how these
How
things
it
are.
all works.
Exactly.
Right.
So even when you've been doing RVing, you know, things can change, and you know,
Sure.
so anyway, well, I hope
Yeah.
that if nothing else, I just wanted to get this out there because if you're thinking about buying an RV and you're worried about it, don't be. Just understand it's okay, and you're going to get through it. And if you see somebody out there doing it for the first time, and maybe it's not their very first time, but maybe they're just new to RVing, you know, be observant, offer help, and know when to walk away.
Yep. Yep.
Any other tips?
I think that's pretty good.
Think that's
I
pretty
think you
good?
nailed it.
Yeah. So
Nailed it.
seemed like a great topic as we go into because now we are full-fledged RV camping season. It's
Yes, it is.
June, and it's only going to get busier from here.
Yeah, it's been busy.
Yep. All right. Well, everyone who has listened to this whole episode, thank
Oh,
you
bless
so
your
much.
heart.
We really appreciate it.
Jibber jabber.
I think we're finally back in a rhythm here.
Back in the groove.
Yeah, this is 3 in a row.
Back in
So
the
hopefully we'll keep this
groove.
going, especially now that you are officially
Retired.
Patty is done. You walked out of the school for your very last time, at least as a teacher.
You know, like Alice Cooper says, school's out forever. That's me.
You're not happy, are you?
Oh, I'm very happy. It was kind of like a big weight was
Lifted off your
lifted.
shoulder.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And a special thank you to our good friend and producer, Mr. Jim Kuzman, who every
Thank you, Jim.
episode takes time out of his busy schedule to edit this, refine it, and make it the most amazing sounding podcast on the internet.
He is
If only he
awesome.
had better talent to work with.
Yeah. Sorry.
So we feel bad for him, but we do appreciate all of his hard work to make us sound really, really good.
Yeah.
All right,
Absolutely.
everybody. Until next time, we'll see ya.
On down the road.
Bye.
Travels with Delaney. We'll see you on down the road.